For most of her life, Clara Whitmore had been the steady one. The dependable daughter who never made waves, never asked for more than her share. She was 33 now, and finally, it was her turn to stand in the light. Her wedding was only weeks away, the gown chosen, the venue booked, the guest list carefully curated with love and patience. She trusted her family, she trusted her fiancé. She thought she was building something unshakable. Until one Tuesday evening, she walked into her kitchen and saw it. A single folded sheet of paper resting on the counter, as casual as a grocery list. The wedding is canceled. Please await contact from legal counsel. That was it. No conversation, no explanation, 7 clipped words that didn't just cancel a ceremony, they detonated her entire future. Clara stood there for a long time, staring at the note, her pulse loud in her ears. The worst part wasn't the coldness of it, the worst part was the handwriting. It wasn't her fiance's, it wasn't even her sister's, it was her mother's. By the time she pieced it together, the truth was grotesque in its simplicity. The wedding wasn't canceled at all, it was stolen. The dress she had dreamed of since girlhood, the flowers she had personally chosen, the very date she had circled on her calendar. All of it had been handed over to her younger sister, Violet. Her fiancé, Nathan Hale, wasn't objecting. He wasn't standing up for her, he was quietly going along with it. Clara didn't scream, she didn't cry, she sent one text back, 2 words only, message received, but inside her chest, something far colder than grief took root. A silent, calculating fire that whispered one undeniable truth, the thought she would vanish quietly, they were wrong. Clara didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table, the paper still in front of her, like some grotesque invitation to her own erasure. By dawn, she wasn't numb anymore. She was sharp, focused. If her family thought she'd disappear quietly, they had forgotten who she really was. She began pulling at threads. The first came from the florist, an invoice she had saved weeks earlier under her name. When she called to confirm, the receptionist hesitated, then said gently, "Oh, aren't the arrangements under Violet Whitmore now?" Clara's stomach turned. One by one, the discoveries stacked up. The photographer's contract, once in her email, now forwarded to a joint Whitmore family celebration address. The venue, once booked in her name, updated online with Violet's initials. Even the seating chart, which Clara had agonized over, now posted on Violet's wedding website, copied word for word. It wasn't sloppy, it was deliberate. Every detail of her future had been rewritten, her name neatly crossed out like she was nothing more than a placeholder. And then came the recording. Buried in an old voicemail folder was a message she had saved by accident years earlier. She played it on speaker, her hands trembling. Her mother's voice, calm and businesslike, "Clara will manage. She always does. Violet, though, Violet is the investment. We just have to handle the timing carefully." The words sliced deeper than the note on the counter ever could. Clara realized this betrayal wasn't sudden, it was a strategy. A family plan she had been excluded from long before she even knew it existed. Nathan's silence began to make sense too. The little hesitations in his voice when they talked about money. His growing deference to her mother during planning. He hadn't been trapped, he had been complicit. Clara pressed her palms flat against the table, nails digging into the wood. She wasn't broken, not yet. Her grief had hardened into something else entirely, a plan. They thought they had erased her. What they didn't know was that she had kept every receipt, every email, every contract. And she was ready to turn their stolen fairy tale into evidence. The days crawled by, but Clara didn't collapse, she transformed. Her dining table became a war desk, neat stacks of invoices, contracts, email printouts. Her laptop screen glowed through the night as she built digital folders, naming them with precision: catering fraud, venue switch, altered contracts. Every paper she touched wasn't just proof, it was fuel. Her mother had raised her to be meticulous, detail-oriented, predictable. Now that very discipline became her weapon. She froze the joint savings account Nathan had once insisted they open together. She dug through bank statements going back years, looking for anything that didn't add up. What she found made her blood run cold. Small donations made in her name to a foundation she had never heard of. A foundation registered to her mother's home address. Clara didn't scream, she documented. By the eve of Violet's big day, the day that was supposed to be hers, Clara was done mourning. She was done doubting. She had built her case, and now she was ready to use it. When the morning sun rose on what her family was calling the Whitmore wedding, Clara didn't hide. She opened her laptop, signed into the social media account she barely used, and began to upload screenshots of contracts with her name erased, emails forwarding her plans to Violet, the florist's invoice with a scratched-out signature, a clip of her mother's voice on that damning voicemail Clara will manage. Violet is the investment, and then the photo. Violet smiling in a boutique mirror, wearing the custom dress Clara had designed, a one-of-a-kind gown Clara had paid for with months of overtime. Clara added a caption, not a rant, not a plea. Just 12 steady words. This isn't betrayal, this is erasure. And here is the evidence. She hit post. For a moment, there was silence. Then her phone lit up. Dozens of notifications, hundreds. The post was spreading fast, screenshot after screenshot, people tagging friends, whispering in group chats. By noon, Clara's phone had recorded 67 missed calls. Her mother, Violet, Nathan, unknown numbers. Her screen pulsed like a firework display of panic and guilt. Clara placed the phone face down and went back to her work. The story was out. The wedding would go on, but not in the way they had planned. By the time Violet walked down the aisle, Clara's evidence had already reached hundreds of people. Guests whispered behind programs, scrolling through their phones as screenshots spread in private group chats. What was supposed to be Violet's perfect day had turned into a circus of suspicion. Clara wasn't there in person. She didn't need to be. Her presence was in every notification, every hushed conversation between guests pretending not to stare at the bride. Violet's smile trembled in photos, her grip on Nathan's arm stiff, unnatural. But the wedding humiliation was only the beginning. That night, Clara got an unexpected message. It was from Ruth Gallagher, the family's former accountant, a woman her mother had quietly fired 2 years ago. Ruth had seen Clara's post and decided it was time to share what she had discovered before she was dismissed. Margaret Whitmore had been funneling money through a bogus charity registered under Clara's name. Tens of thousands of dollars disguised as donations rerouted into a private shell account. Clara's blood ran cold. This wasn't just betrayal, it was fraud. Criminal fraud, and her name was attached. She didn't hesitate. The next morning, she walked into her lawyer's office with a thumb drive of evidence. Together, they built a case that went far beyond stolen flowers and a wedding gown. This was identity misuse, financial misconduct, calculated erasure. Weeks later, in the courtroom, Clara finally faced them. Violet sat pale and tight-lipped beside Nathan, whose once proud posture now sagged under the weight of exposure. Margaret, ever the matriarch, tried to mask her fury with poise, but her hands twitched against the wooden table. Clara's lawyer laid out the evidence with surgical precision. Altered contracts, redirected payments, fraudulent charity documents. And finally, the voicemail, Margaret's voice, calm and cold, Clara will manage. Violet is the investment, the gallery buzzed. Reporters scribbled, Margaret's composure cracked. And then came the twist Clara hadn't seen coming. Nathan rose to the witness stand. For weeks he had stayed silent, complicit. But now, under oath, he produced his own emails and recordings, proof that Margaret had coached him to distance himself from Clara, to let Violet take her place, to consider Clara a liability to the family's future. The judge didn't just rule in Clara's favor. She froze Margaret's assets, referred the case for criminal investigation, and ordered restitution for Clara. The Whitmore's social standing, their carefully built facade, collapsed overnight. For the first time in her life, Clara didn't feel invisible. She felt undeniable. The judgment should have felt like victory. And in a way, it did. Clara walked out of that courtroom with restitution, her name cleared, and her mother's empire in ruins. The check the court awarded her was more money than she had ever seen in her life. But as she held it in her hands, she didn't feel rich, she felt hollow. Because no number could measure the cost of realizing your own family saw you as expendable. Clara didn't cash the check right away. Instead, she framed it and hung it on her wall, not as a trophy, but as a scar. A reminder of what silence had cost her and how evidence had become her salvation. When she finally did use the money, it wasn't for herself. She founded the Lantern Trust, a nonprofit dedicated to helping women who had been erased by family manipulation, coerced into silence, or trapped in financial abuse. She named it after the lantern her grandmother used to keep on her porch, a light that burned no matter how dark the night. Her work became her revenge, but also her redemption. Dozens of women reached out. Some whispered their stories late at night, some sent boxes of paperwork, others just asked for someone to believe them. And Clara did. She believed them all. Months later, Violet emailed her. Long paragraphs of excuses, how she didn't know the full plan, how she just wanted love, how Margaret had promised this was the only way to save the family. Clara read the words, then closed her laptop. She wrote back just one sentence: "Forgiveness isn't the prize, Violet, truth is," and she meant it. Now, when Clara looks in the mirror, she no longer sees the quiet, reliable daughter who blended into the wallpaper. She sees a woman who was stolen from, erased, rewritten, and who refused to vanish. Her voice is no longer a whisper, it is a warning. And as she tells her story to others, she always ends with the same question: what would you have done? Would you have protected your blood at any cost? Or would you have chosen the truth, no matter the price?